Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AustCham's Digital Economy Committee. Our virtual meeting today is on the importance of data analysis and usage. And we have three members of our Digital Economy Committee here to present for you. I'll pass over now to the first speaker in our virtual meeting, Rajiv Parrab. Rajiv, over to you.
Thank you very much. So just to set the pace for the session today and to review what we had presented last time, and this is an amalgamation of a business framework that I had used when I was a CEO of a number of different companies in terms of setting the strategy and then overlaying a number of different factors, including applications and the use of digital technologies and processes in terms of operating the business. So let me just very quickly go through this. I want to add a different chart next and kind of explain a little bit more detail. So on the top, obviously, are the stakeholders. The next one is the strategy development. The next one is the business applications, and Jan will spend quite a bit of time on the marketing side of it. The last one is a technology application. So we're building top down in terms of the applicability of the applications, and then inside the applications, breaking it down into examples like email, CRM, payments, and so on. What are the applications we want to use, and then how do we interconnect them in terms of an overall, let's use the term, digital transformation process. And underpinning all of this is the very important part of having a single source of truth, or a database, if I can use that term. And the example we would use is SQL. So this would be at a board, at a CEO level, and a very, I've showed it quite simply, a simple framework of how all the different parts connect and how you actually put the applications to it. And as I mentioned, Jan will talk at the end about how you can, in marketing, use Google Analytics, and also in terms of collaboration, like team building. So one of the objectives at a board level, at a CEO level, is exactly what does this imply when you go into a digital strategy format. So the evolution and transformation. And one of the things at a board level that we had done is, what is it that we want out of this? So here are some very, very simple examples. You may or may not agree with the numbers, but these are, examples. Number one, can we, in terms of fixed costs or in terms of overheads, go down by 3%. So how do we do that? We would automate processes. We would simplify workflows. We would look at a single source of truth of data and so on. The next one is data analytics. So can we, in terms of analyzing the CRM information and doing some predictive modeling, can we target our marketing programs and strategies and then business development activities into much tighter clusters? So again, this would be an integrated digital transformation process. The other one, which is very critical for me, was the cash liquidity. So in terms of my working capital, are there ways that I can use transformation processes to increase my working capital and also my liquidity? And these are the sorts of targets we set. And the last one is, one of the things that we had to be very careful about is one of the areas that tends to get away from you if you're not careful are the marketing costs. And so one of the things we looked at is, can we keep the level of value to a client in terms of our programs and sales strategies, but decrease the cost? And how do we do that? By using different technologies and, again, integrating it into a cohesive workflow. And then the last two are soft skills, for example, people skills development, and then moving marketing programs more to digital frameworks. So, one of the very simple things, for example, on a website or on a particular If you look at the traffic analysis, if you find that something's not working, you can change it fairly easily and fairly quickly. So in summary, this we used, showed you the chart last time. These, we believe, are the main components in defining your digital strategy and digital transformation points. And if you look at number 3, that's pretty important because technology is going to change. So you need to actually build your business plan on the digital side using a technology plug and play model. Because today, one product could be very good and could be disruptive, but in a week from now or a month from now, a year from now, it could be hindering your performance. So you need to be able to plug and play. And that goes into obsolescence and integration. The other one, which was pretty important, was also the skills development. And a lot of people, again, what I mentioned last time, are very good at the individual components. But when you actually want to run a business and integrate it all together, there are few and far between people who kind of can look at the top and balance the cash burn versus the sales versus the technology versus the different components. So I hope this gives you a kind of a good next stage. So now let me pass it on to Stuart, who will go through a few points, and then from there, from Stuart, we'll go to Jan. So Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Rajiv. So just to finish off and pick up on what Rajiv has been saying, it's a very good model when you look at that and trying to make sure that the business is simplified. But I'll go back and add in one key thing or mantra that I keep using. If you can't measure it, if you can't manage it, you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So, and this is where data becomes critical in your business, because data is the one thing that will always tell you what's going on, and whether that be in your marketing, in your finance, in any of the operations of your business, having the data there that you can measure it also allows you to manage it and change it if things aren't happening very well. And we've looked at this very seriously for a number of organizations nowadays, and it does help. Now, Jan is going to talk more in detail about Google Analytics, which is very good at looking at websites and giving you analytics on how your website's running and a few other things. So that is one measure that you can have. And as Rajiv has mentioned before, the finance systems, the data in your finance systems. So looking all of that gives you a dashboard in the end, and that dashboard in the end can allow you to look at your business to see how it's running. And if you have an area that's sort of dropping off, then you can just keep drilling down. So we really do make it very important that people understand that the data is where you can actually measure and manage your business, at least from the observation point of view, and to manage change and measure change. So I'm going to stop there because we do want to do something else today. In our topics, we've started off talking about the frameworks and data, but we'd also be very interested in finding out from the other members of AustCham is what you would like to see or what you would like to hear about in digital technology. So we've put some points up here that may be of interest for you. And what I'll get you to do, and you can choose as many of these as you want, or you can choose one, is just put the number into the chat. Or alternatively, if there's something you would like to understand and is not there, just type it into the chat box. And what we'll do is we'll then pick all of that up, and it gives us a better understanding of where people, what people want to see next. Okay, so while you're all doing that, and again, there's some interesting topics there. Social media is always one. I always have a lot of fun with social media. AI, everybody wants to know how to get the benefits of AI. And I can tell you straight out, you only have to look at companies like Amazon and Google to understand the value of AI in their worlds. Our customer experience is always a good thing, particularly today as we move more into the digital world. And there's a lot of work being done in the customer experience space. As Rajiv said, getting the most out of your financial systems. And whilst we like to track how our customers are doing, sometimes you want to track your competitors. And I know you can do that in Google Analytics as well. And email. Email is really contacting your customers. You can contact them, you can use any sort of social media, but generally speaking, the tried and true method of being able to contact people is email. So there's some, and I'm seeing a few come in, so thank you very much. That's useful. And as I say, if you think of more going through, please just add them in and we'll pick them up. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Jan because he's got a very exciting presentation on Google Analytics and Microsoft Teams. Over to you, Jan.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart and Rajiv. Okay, so today I was asked to tell a little bit something about how to use data in day-to-day business. And there are a few tools that I would like to present today and how they can be used to your benefit. And I would just like to reiterate what was said today and also in the last webinar. So basically, I think these two key statements are so important and so true. So Stuart mentioned that data is your company's most important asset. So it's really important that we take a look at how you can actually collect this data and then view it in a senseful manner. Now, Rajiv mentioned that the key is to have a single source of truth. And this is also very important because if you have multiple different data sets and they are not aligned, it can actually result in confusion in your business. So overall, what we will do today is we will take a look at how you can get some data, not all, but some, and then we will also check out how you can make this data accessible to yourself and also your team members and your other stakeholders that maybe require data. Okay, so to categorize today's topics, I created these two sections. I would like to differentiate the two topics in digital marketing performance and business communications. And just to give you a better idea of what is out there, I have listed right here a couple of services that can be used to track your digital marketing performance. So the first, actually starting after Google Analytics, Matomo and Vupra, all of these, they allow you to track your website and app performance. So whenever I talk about Google Analytics, keep in mind, this is only one of many different services that are out there. It's definitely the most popular one, but yeah, there are others as well. And then if you would like to track also your performance on social media, there are again other services like Sprout Social and HubSpot. So there are a lot of different options there to track your digital marketing performance. And then in terms of business communication, so over here, I didn't really want to highlight the different tools that you have for business communications, but actually the tools that you can use to analyze your business communication data. So how many emails is your company sending? How many phone calls does each employee take every day? Like how much time do you actually spend on meetings internally and externally? So all of that can be tracked. And I just put two options out here that could be used to track this. And for today's webinar, we will focus on two different services like Rajiv and Stuart mentioned already. I will highlight the benefits of using Google Analytics, and also I will in the end get to the point to show you Microsoft 365 usage analytics. And I will explain this with the example of Microsoft Teams. So to cut it short, we will look at these two tools. And when I say Microsoft Teams, I would also again highlight that there are other collaboration tools as well. So there's, for example, Slack you can use. You can also use internal chat systems that you might have. Maybe even your CRM has such functionality. So please always keep that in mind. There are other options as well. So for now, let's start with Google Analytics. I first want to illustrate why Google Analytics is such an important topic and why you maybe should know about it. And basically here you have some of the reasons. So 85%, almost 86% of websites that track their user data are using Google Analytics for that. So this kind of shows you the importance. I tried to find a number of how many websites actively use Google Analytics today. Google is not sharing this data. what I found was a number from 2017, and there they said over 50 million websites. So by now we can very likely assume there are many more websites that use Google Analytics, but I just want to use this number again to illustrate the importance of Google Analytics. And now the best bit about Google Analytics is because it's so popular, there are integrations out there that allow you to take the data from Google Analytics and use it in your business intelligence tools. So whatever you use, either you use Microsoft Power BI, Oracle Analytics Cloud, or Google Data Studio, all of these different tools can actually use the data that you gather in Google Analytics. So that's, again, a reason why you should think about like to learn more about Google Analytics and maybe even integrate it in your website if you haven't done so already. So let's take a look what you can actually track with Google Analytics. So Google Analytics differentiates the data in basically these 4 different categories. About the audience, you can pretty much track everything you can think of, like from the interest to the location, to the age of a user. You can track all of that with Google Analytics. And how they do it is that because so many websites use Google Analytics, Google can create a profile of each user because they know exactly what websites each user visited, and based on the behavior, they can calculate, assume what kind of character or person is behind this user. It's not exact data. So if you compare it, for example, to Facebook, where most of the users are happy to provide all their personal information, Google does it a bit differently. They use algorithms to calculate what kind of user that might be, and that data you have access to. So then we also have data about the source. Where are people actually coming from when they visit your website or your app? It's very interesting to understand if you get users, for example, through Google, through other social media networks, or users that directly type in your website in the browser because maybe you have been very active in offline marketing. So this is also quite interesting data. Then the behavior itself is also important. Again, in your website and app, you want to understand how are users actually using your website and what content are they interested in. So let's assume you are a new startup and you built a really shiny new website that looks amazing, and the CEOs are happy with the website. And then you look at the data and you realize, yes, you have a lot of users, but most of the time they just go to the FAQ page. They don't even look at the shiny homepage. They go to the FAQ page. These are things that you cannot guess. You cannot guess this user behavior. So you need to look at the data to understand how the website is being used and then make adjustments based on that. And that also is true for apps. So it allows you basically to adjust your web and app presence towards the user behavior. And it basically takes a guessing game out of the adjustments. Now, the last bit are conversions. And when you look at the keywords that I mentioned here, goals, revenue, sales, you might directly think, this is only important for an e-commerce business. But this is not right. You can actually track different kind of events on your website or app. So for instance, you may want to track every time when somebody uses a contact form on your website, just to see like the number of requests you get. You may want to be able to set a value to certain actions. So if somebody copies and pastes the phone number on your website or the email address, you maybe want to know that. And once you know that, then you can actually look what kind of users do these kind of actions and take actions on your website to improve the whole user experience. So conversions and tracking goals and events, it's not just something for e-commerce businesses. It's actually any business that can benefit from this. All right, and before I continue, I would just like to highlight that you can ask me any questions anytime. I think this might be a lot of information in between. So if anything comes up that is not clear to you, please feel free to maybe just write it in the chat, and hopefully I pick up on that. I see it directly. Okay, so that being said, actually adding Google Analytics to your website or app is super simple. So I will not go into the details how you actually copy and paste the code, but essentially you just sign up like any other online service. You don't need to have any technical knowledge. Then you get a piece of code that needs to be placed in your website. And very likely, if you have a website, you know who to contact, who's responsible for the website. And it's really, really simple for that person. For anyone who works with websites, they can do it. So it's that simple. In best case, it takes like 2-3 minutes. Worst case, maybe half an hour, I would say. All right, so this is just to illustrate how easy it can be done. When we look at all the different data that Google Analytics provides, it's actually important what you make out of it. So on this slide here, I wanted to highlight what you can actually learn when you look at more than one data set at the same time in Google Analytics. And I think what is very interesting is that you can actually, you have the ability to predict market trends. For instance, if you have used Google Analytics for the last 5 years, you maybe see traffic spikes in certain seasons. And when you see that, when you saw these traffic spikes in the past, you can estimate that in this year or the next year, you very likely see these traffic spikes again, and then you can anticipate those. For instance, if you run an online shop and you want to use the Christmas season like for your sales, you know, like if you see the number of users that visit your site at the time, you know, next time you should prepare something for these users that visit your site. So you can actually, almost predict the future number of users that visit your site, and you can work with that. You can adjust your business activities. You also are able to better understand your audience. Now, in theory, I guess we all know who our target audience is. Like all our businesses have different target audiences, and we kind of feel like we have the right idea who that is. Now, if you have a quite, like I would say, if you have quite a few users on your website, you can actually get a better idea who actually your target audience is, because those people that actually are on your website and are interested in your content or in the app as well, they should become your target audience. It would be a shame if you just stick to what you thought is your target audience and don't use that data. So I recommend really look at who are the users that visit your website or app and make business decisions based on that. Now, the next part is also, I think, quite interesting. So in the past, we have worked with different companies that had different expectations for their websites. And as like most of the time, especially in the past, like 2-3 years ago, when we focused more on web development and app development, many businesses came to us and said, we need a website. And they had a certain budget set for this website. And they justified these budgets with the number of users they think they get on the website and the importance they think they get on the website. And a lot of time, I can tell that they overestimate how important their website actually is. So many businesses that we have worked with, they have created websites in the past and they just thought users come to these websites. They didn't take any actions in terms of search engine optimization. So when they then ask when they then come to us and ask us to build a website, they calculate the budgets based on that. And sometimes we just need to tell them, hey, I think we think that your value for this website is set too high, because it's not as important as, for example, your social media presences where you have much more activity. So it allows you, by seeing the number of users and seeing the activity on your website, it allows you to understand the value of your website better. Of course, you can change it. So if you're unhappy with what you're seeing at that time, there are marketing activities that can be done to increase the number of users, but it might help you. Now, lastly, it just helps you to understand where to start with improvements. So sometimes you maybe don't have the time to revamp an entire website, but you know something needs to be done. And to just get a better idea what should be done first, you can see the main pain points on your website. So if you see a page that is visited a lot, but from there the users leave your website, then that's something that needs to be fixed. And this is the kind of information you get out of the Google Analytics data, and the decisions that you can make based on that are basically more informed. Now, if we look at the Google Analytics dashboards, it can be quite overwhelming. So Google Analytics has so many subpages, so many different ways to track the users, to track different behaviors, that I cannot recommend for any manager to go yourself through all these different pages and try to make sense of it. It's very important that you create a connection to a business intelligence tool, a BI tool, that helps you to basically create key KPIs that are relevant for your business based on this data. And what I wanted to show today is how this can look like, for example, with Microsoft Power BI. So Microsoft Power BI, even though it's Microsoft and we are talking about Google Analytics, Microsoft Power BI actually offers an official integration with Google Analytics. So you don't need to write any code. You don't need to ask any developer or engineer to set this up for you. It's actually just a few mouse clicks, and you connect your Google Analytics data as a data set to Microsoft Power BI. And then you can manage your dashboard and the KPIs. You can set them up as you like and make it work for your business. So this is something that I hardly see in businesses here in Thailand and around the world, that you actually take advantage of these capabilities of the tools that you are likely already use. And I'm also convinced, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm convinced that there are similar integrations for other BI tools. So I recommend you spend a little extra time there, connect the two services, and you will have an easier way to access the data. Yes, Rajiv, go ahead.
One of the interesting aspects that we had used with the BI, Jan talks about the marketing information. One of the other interesting aspects is you can actually expand the BI tool to not only show marketing, but also operational information, financial, cash balances in the bank, and so on. So you can actually start and expand. So when you come in the morning, there you should have a snapshot of what's happened the day before. So this product that Jan's talking about can be expanded to look at the various other sections of your business as well, not just marketing. So
very good. Thank you, Rajiv. All right. Now, I also would like to add that Microsoft Power BI is a paid tool. It's not for free. If you would just like to start with any BI tool, I can also recommend Google Data Studio. It offers less functionality, but it's free. So it's definitely good for startups and smaller businesses that just want to take a look how they can use BI tools for their advantage. Actually, it goes hand in hand with what Rajiv just mentioned. I wanted to also highlight that with the BI tool, you can then connect the data sets, and you can, for instance, use the Google Analytics data with the data from, for example, your CRM like Salesforce to calculate the cost of opportunity. And this is what we see right here. This is a dashboard that combines different data sets and shows the cost of opportunity and other KPIs that are relevant for the business that uses this dashboard. So I think this is something that offers you unlimited possibilities, and also at the same time makes it very personalized for your business. And I think this is important to think about when you actually think about reading the Google Analytics data using a BI tool. All right, so at this time, we are actually already almost done with the Google Analytics part. And right now, it's about making the data accessible. Because how good is the data if most of your team members don't know how to get to the right dashboard, how to find the right data? And that's basically where Microsoft Teams comes in. So you may have heard of Microsoft Teams in the past. It's a collaboration platform, and it combines a lot of different activities that you did in the past with different tools. So it allows you to message with your team members and also with your customers. It allows you to collaborate on different documents like Excel sheets, Word documents. You can schedule meetings, you can make phone calls. It's basically a replacement almost for Skype and Skype Business. You can also better manage the time and projects, everything directly inside Microsoft Teams. And the reason why it offers so much functionality and even beyond that is that it has an open API that is not open source in that sense. I would like to highlight that, but it's free to use by anyone. So essentially, you as a business, you have the opportunity to write your own apps that integrate directly inside Microsoft Teams, or you can use apps from third-party providers that offer functionality that you are looking for. So it's actually quite powerful. At this time, again, I would like to highlight there's Slack as well. I think Slack is the closest competitor. It also offers an API. It offers similar functionality, but it is not as integrated in Microsoft services. So just keep that in mind. Now, if we look at a typical example how Microsoft Teams can improve efficiency, this would be it. So by basically offering a unified platform for your team members to communicate, you can reduce the number of emails that are sent on a daily basis. I will share some statistics on the next slide of a study that was done 2 years ago. And you will see how much time can be saved using a tool like Microsoft Teams. It also can eliminate the need for any other video conferencing or call software like Skype or Zoom. Now, again, and I want to be transparent, personally, I feel Zoom has a much better video quality than Microsoft Teams, but Microsoft Teams is not horrible. It's usable, but overall Zoom somehow has done a better job in terms of quality when you do video conferencing. And lastly, it allows you to easier share updates in your business. So in Microsoft Teams, you have in every team, that's how they categorize the different areas where your team members can communicate. You have a dashboard. And if you want to announce something, you can just write it in there, and everyone in the team will see it. So you no longer need to, for example, send a bulk email to all your different team members or managers. You can actually just use Teams, write the message, everyone will see it. It's much faster, and you can actually also track who saw the messages. So it also allows you a little bit to see who's actually interested in your content. Now, if we look at statistics, this is what I found when I did the research for today's session. There's actually a study from Forrester Research from 2 years ago. And that study interviewed over 100,000 users. They surveyed over 100,000 users. And these users participated from, I think, 260 businesses around the world. So it's not just in Thailand, it's around the world. And these users claimed that they freed up time just by using a tool like Microsoft Teams between 1 and 8 hours. That's already a lot per week. So saving 8 hours per week, you actually save a whole business day, just because you communicate more efficiently. And that's, I think, already a big reason why a tool like this should be considered and should be also encouraged from the top down to anyone in your team to use it. I mean, it's one thing to have access to a tool and another thing to actually use it. Another number that I found interesting is that it actually also benefited the overall happiness of the employees. Like, they were happy that they have only a single place where they can do everything that is important for their daily work. And I think this is also important, like you can reduce the stress of your team members, of your employees, by simplifying how they can access the data. And lastly, when they interviewed decision makers in this survey, the decision makers claimed that they can make decisions faster almost up to 18%, just because they have faster access to the data instead of logging in again to all the different services, all the different tools that they use to see the data sets. They have just Microsoft Teams and can view the data. So all of this together, I think, are good reasons to at least consider a tool like Microsoft Teams. Now, during COVID, Microsoft Teams has enjoyed a massive spike in active users. So you see at the end of 2019, they were around 20 million users. And today they are at over 140 million users. So these are active users. And that just shows you how popular Microsoft Teams is. And again, as a comparison, I think Slack offers a similar functionality, but they only today, they have only over 10 million users. So from the popularity, Microsoft Teams appears to be much more popular. Now, back away from these statistics, and let's see how we can actually view Power BI data inside Microsoft Teams. So right here, I'm showing you a screenshot of a typical Microsoft Teams dashboard. And maybe for those users of you that already use Microsoft Teams, you maybe use it for messaging, you maybe use it for video conferencing, but this is something I think most of you might not use yet. Here we see the Power BI app that is officially available by Microsoft, and it shows a custom dashboard for this particular user. So you can also create corporate dashboards that are predefined, but as a user, you can make your own dashboards as well to see the data that you actually need for your day-to-day business. And this, I think, is just a very good example because it highlights how simplified complex data can be displayed and how much faster you can actually access this data. Just imagine, like, you first click on chat, you write with other team members in your team, you then have a call under here, and then you just click on the Power BI app and you see the data. You don't need to enter a website address, you don't need to open another software, everything is in here. And that saves you time and makes your whole workflow, hopefully, a bit smoother. I think this is already a good example, but next, what I wanted to show you is what the Open API can do. And here we see some extra extensions. They are also done by Microsoft, but they are not installed or available by default. They can be installed by anyone. And the reason why I highlighted both of these is that Stuart mentioned in the last webinar that he believes, and Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, that in the next 18 months, more and more will be signed online. So signing documents digitally will become more and more popular, and in around 18 months, you expect to see it everywhere. Was that right?
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, as a global company ourselves, we do all of our signing digitally, and there are a number of tools that do that, and we see more and more people moving to that model.
So that's why I wanted to show this app that can be installed in Teams. Essentially, it's Microsoft's way to digitally sign documents, and they now integrate this app with other services. And as you can see, I haven't really used it. This is a screenshot from my Teams, but they now integrate it also with Adobe Sign, that is a popular digital signing service, and other services will follow very soon. So again, now for signing documents digitally, you don't need to leave the Teams app. Everything is inside Microsoft Teams. The other app that I wanted to show is interesting for businesses that rely on shifts. For example, restaurants or hotels. If you want to track who clocks in, who clocks out, you can do it also inside Microsoft Teams. And for those of you that don't know it, Microsoft Teams also exists as an app for your phone, for your tablet. So you could ask your employees actually to install Microsoft Teams on their phones, and then they can clock in and clock out via their phones. And that can be, again, something that adds efficiency to your business. So I hope this kind of gives you a better picture of all the possibilities that you have within Microsoft Teams. And now, lastly, I want to show you how you can actually, as a manager, see how active your team members are when they use tools like Microsoft Teams. And again, I mentioned earlier, there are two different ways, and it really depends on what kind of tools you're using. If you use Microsoft Teams and also the connected Microsoft 365 subscription service, then you would need to look at Microsoft 365 usage analytics. And if you use, for example, Google Workspace for all your communication and you don't use Teams, which is also fine, then you can use Google Workspace reporting to get a better idea how these services are being used. And I would want to show you now an example how this could look like. So what I really enjoy about Microsoft 365 usage analytics, that it's not just data that you see. So you do not just see how many meetings your team members had in the past month or other time frames or how much time they spent in meetings, but you also actually get suggestions from these analytics on how to improve efficiency. So for instance, they compare your activity in your business with benchmark activity of other businesses. And by that, they show you either you are above average or below average. So if your business receives a lot of emails, but you don't send a lot of emails, then actually there might be an issue. Maybe you are unable to answer all of the emails because you can't handle it. And this is something you can easily see in here. You also are able to just see like general numbers, how much time they spend in Microsoft Teams or other applications, how many messages they send. And all of this gives you a better picture on how communication is actually being handled in your business. And it allows you then to make a decision. Like if you see, for example, that there are way too many emails being sent and received, you know that you maybe need to educate your team members to use Microsoft Teams or another messaging tool more in their day-to-day work. And you need to ask them to reduce the number of emails. So we have actually done this together with a large tire manufacturer that is operating in many different countries. And we have done it here in Thailand together with them to help them to improve their efficiency. And they were able to reduce the number of emails by 15% in the past 12 months. And by that, they saved also a lot of time, because we could see how much time they spent writing emails. And we now see that they freed up this time and have time for other tasks. So this was something that was a lot of fun doing for us as a business to help with this other business and basically get more time back and reduce the number of emails. And essentially the bottom line is, all we did is we asked them, hey, use Microsoft Teams more. They already used Microsoft Teams before, but they still relied a lot on emails. So again, I think what's important is that if you have access to this data and you don't use it, it's also useless. Like, so I recommend, like, if you have access to this data, take a look, see what kind of information is provided and what does it mean for your business. So to sum it up for today, I have these key takeaways written down. I strongly believe that tools like Microsoft Teams are the future for corporate communication. I think we will steer away from having a lot of different services and tools and softwares for different activities. I think it will be unified in single applications. And I don't say that necessarily Microsoft Teams is the answer for all problems, but there will be, I think, tools like Microsoft Teams in the future that essentially almost replace your email like services, your Skype, your Zoom, all of this. The second point is I would like to ask you really look at the usage and at the usage analytics of your different communication tools. Like, see how actually your team members are using these tools, and then check if there are ways to improve it. The third point is to just understand, just by educating your team members, you can increase efficiency. You can free up time for your employees that they can use in a better way. And the last bit, it goes back to actually like Google Analytics. just having a tool like Google Analytics is not enough. You actually need to set it up the right way so that you can make the right decisions based on the data that you get. And one last thing, it's just for your info that I would like to put out here. In the next version of Windows 11, Microsoft Teams will be installed by default. It will be the main communication tool directly on Windows. So users no longer need to install this app. It's directly there on their computers. So that should just also, again, show you how important these kind of tools are and how much Microsoft has expectations for the future of such tools. And that's basically it for my part in this little webinar today. I would like to thank you for joining, and I would like to end it by asking, does anyone have any questions, either to me, Rajiv, or Stuart?
I'll just make a comment, Jan, on the Microsoft Teams. We use Microsoft Teams, and the biggest benefit that we found is having all of the data in one place. Data repositories can be frightening in organizations as you find 10, 15 or more repositories, and we've at least put everything in Microsoft Teams so everyone has access to it, and it is useful certainly from that perspective.
And I think any type of business can benefit from it. Like, I think it doesn't need to be a digital business. It doesn't need to be like a tech-driven business. It can also be business that usually operate offline. Having everything in one place and making it easier for your team members to access the data is a huge advantage.
If you do have any questions for Jan, Stuart, or Rajiv, you could, of course, always contact me and ask for a direct introduction so that you can talk with them further. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap things up for today. Thank you to Rajiv, Stuart, and Jan. Jan, I found your last comments very interesting on everything moving into one platform in the end. I know for myself, I sit on Zoom quite a lot, of course, and flicking between Line, WhatsApp, email, of course, and occasionally I get the traditional phone call, which is often unusual. So it will be interesting to see where technology goes, and all onto one platform and making life easier for us. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to our audience for attending. It's great to see you all, and look forward to seeing you all again soon.